Elara stands in her sleek, high-end architectural office, the late Friday afternoon light casting long shadows across her desk. After a full day of guarded hesitation, she finally drops her rigid posture. A sharp, calculating smirk touches her lips as she actively lowers the drawbridge just an inch to initiate the digital contact. Miles away, Roman sits at his expansive financial advisory desk. His athletic presence is deeply grounded, perfectly reflecting the end of a high-pressure week. His steady, unblinking focus drops, and a warm, victorious smirk spreads across his face as he secures her direct coordinates. Operating flawlessly as the patient fixer, he recognizes her hesitation and crafts his reply with a controlled, deliberate grace.
This is Elara. I am officially logging a structural grievance regarding your abandoned business card taking up premium space in my possession for the last 24 hours. If your siege camp is still operational, I suppose a brief Friday evening inspection might be in order.
Grievance received. My siege camp is always operational for a premium audit, especially after a long week of analyzing market fluctuations. Where exactly is the master architect conducting this evening's inspection?
Alara's eyes track the incoming message, the corner of her mouth ticking upward into a sharp, highly entertained smirk. She leans back in her chair, deliberately making him wait a full minute before replying. She smoothly uncrosses and recrosses her legs, actively maintaining her intellectual high ground by dictating the exact terms of the meeting before surrendering her location. Miles away, Roman lets out a quiet, appreciative chuckle. He is deeply relaxed, reflecting his grounded, unbothered posture at the end of the long week. A warm, chivalrous smile spreads across his face. Operating flawlessly as the patient fixer, he gladly accepts her need to control the narrative, preparing his quick, confident reply without aggressively pushing her boundaries.
I have not officially authorized the deployment of a full siege camp, Roman. This is strictly an exploratory audit. But if you believe your highly touted athletic endurance can handle a Friday evening in a high-end outdoor plaza, I suppose we can test that theory.
Exploratory audit acknowledged. I will leave the heavy artillery at the office. I am more than ready for an outdoor plaza. Elara, send the coordinates.
Ilara's thumb hovers over her phone screen for a long, calculating beat. A genuine, unguarded smile briefly breaks her icy equanimity before she swiftly neutralizes it into her signature, sharp smirk. She deliberately taps out the address, actively choosing to lower the drawbridge and surrender the location of her sanctuary. Roman lets out a rich, quiet laugh as the address materializes on his screen. He maintains a steady, unblinking focus on the phone, a warm, victorious smile radiating from his face. Operating flawlessly as the patient fixer, he smoothly types his brief confirmation, completely respecting the strict boundary she set while perfectly matching her confident energy.
The outdoor architectural plaza on 6th and Grand, 5:30 sharp. Do not be late. I do not wait in the courtyard for anyone.
5:30 sharp at the plaza. I will see you in the courtyard.
Elara sits alone, deliberately keeping her body angled strictly forward to enforce a wide, protective buffer zone. She tracks his approach. Her walls remain intact. Roman steps into the space, moving with a controlled, deliberate grace. Approaching her, he flawlessly reads her defensive posturing. He sits down, deliberately leaving a respectful 2-foot gap to chivalrously honor her required distance. He angles his broad shoulders toward her, his steady, unblinking gaze radiating a warm, grounded patience.
You are exactly on time. A highly unusual trait for a wandering interloper. I trust you brought your analytical skills with you. This particular plaza possesses several structural inefficiencies I have been eager to critique.
I am never late for a scheduled inspection, and I am fully prepared to audit whatever structural flaws you want to point out. Though I have to admit, the view from this side of the courtyard is already a massive upgrade from the library.
Elara completely drops her rigid, defensive posture. her shoulders relaxing as she actively sheds the heavy metaphors. She turns her head slightly to look at him, a warm, unguarded smile replacing her usual icy equanimity. She smoothly initiates a ceasefire, deliberately choosing to normalize the evening. Roman mirrors her relaxed posture, leaning back comfortably while maintaining a respectful physical gap. He turns his head to hold her gaze, a genuine, easygoing smile spreading across his face. He flawlessly accepts the shift in tone, radiating a calm, chivalrous presence as he gladly drops his fixer persona for a normal conversation.
It is definitely an upgrade, but I think we can officially suspend the siege metaphors for the evening. Roman, let's just drop the jargon and try having a normal conversation.
I would be more than happy to do that. No more sieges or audits for the rest of the night. So, what exactly do normal people talk about on a Friday evening? Do we completely avoid talking about work?
Elara embraces the off-the-clock atmosphere, smoothly uncrossing and recrossing her legs as she steps comfortably into the role of the educator. She gestures gracefully forward, her icy equanimity completely replaced by a confident, grounded authority. She is entirely comfortable controlling the narrative in her safe environment. Roman angles his broad shoulders slightly more toward her, respectfully maintaining their deliberate 2-foot gap. He turns his head to follow her gaze, then brings his warm, unblinking focus back to her profile. He settles deeply into an active listener posture, radiating a genuine, chivalrous interest in her perspective.
If you actually want to avoid talking about work, we are sitting in the wrong place. Look at the way they laid out the stonework around the center of this plaza. They were clearly trying to create a natural gathering space. But the sightlines from the street are entirely blocked by those heavy concrete pillars. It unconsciously forces people to keep walking past it, instead of stopping to actually enjoy the space.
I was actually wondering why this side of the plaza felt so empty for a Friday evening. It makes complete sense when you explain it like that. So, if you had been the one drafting the blueprint for this space, how would you have fixed the sightlines without losing the structural support of those pillars?
Elara turns her head slightly to look at him, fully embracing her element as an expert. She smoothly uncrosses and recrosses her legs, gesturing gracefully forward to map out the mechanics in the open air. The cold, guarded tension she usually carries completely dissolves, giving way to a vibrant, grounded authority. She is entirely in her comfort zone here, steering the narrative with absolute precision. Roman tracks her hand movements before letting his steady, fascinated gaze settle right back onto her profile. He absorbs the breakdown with a slow, appreciative nod, thoroughly captivated by the sheer brilliance of her mind. He rests his forearms on his knees, maintaining their respectful distance while giving her the floor completely. He effortlessly feeds her momentum.
I would have utilized a cantilevered design. By anchoring the primary support structure deeply into the rear foundation, you can completely eliminate the need for those front pillars. It instantly opens the entire courtyard to the street, inviting people into the space rather than unconsciously pushing them away. It is a simple adjustment, assuming you actually trust the strength of your foundational materials.
A cantilevered design, so you hide all the heavy lifting out of sight. To keep the front completely open and inviting, it takes a massive amount of confidence in your foundation to pull that off. Is that your signature style when you're designing, or is that just what this particular plaza needed to actually function?
Elara lets out a quiet, appreciative hum, visibly pleased by his accurate summary of the structural concept. She shifts her weight slightly, entirely dropping her guarded defenses to speak with a warm, confident authority. She sweeps her gaze across the heavy concrete pillars one last time, before turning her head to look directly at him as she explains her personal philosophy. Roman absorbs her explanation with a slow, understanding nod, deeply grounded in the shared space. He respectfully maintains their deliberate buffer zone, but angles his broad shoulders slightly more toward her to show his complete investment. His steady, warm gaze remains unblinking, perfectly content to let her safely command the narrative while he genuinely studies the passion behind her expertise.
It is what this specific plaza requires, but I will admit I have a strong preference for clean, unobstructed sightlines in my own work. Hiding the heavy lifting isn't about deception, it is about efficiency. A well-designed structure shouldn't need to loudly announce how hard it is working to stay standing. It should just function effortlessly.
That makes perfect sense. You want the design to speak for itself without the underlying framework getting in the way. But I have to imagine that kind of effortless efficiency is incredibly difficult to achieve in practice. Do you ever get pushback from clients who want the flashy, unnecessary pillars just for the sake of showing off?
Elara lets out a quiet, knowing scoff, visibly entertained by his accurate assessment of human nature. She smoothly uncrosses and recrosses her legs, completely dropping her guarded defenses as she looks directly at him. She commands the off-the-clock conversation with a sharp, vibrant authority. Roman lets out a rich, appreciative laugh, his frame deeply relaxed in the shared space. He smoothly inches just a fraction closer, deliberately maintaining their respectful physical buffer zone while leaning into his active listener posture. He holds her gaze with a warm, unwavering focus, effortlessly connecting her logic to his own worldview.
Constantly. Clients with newly acquired capital almost always want the loudest design possible. They ask for massive, unnecessary columns, simply to prove to everyone else on the street that they can afford them. I spend half of my consultation time trying to explain that true structural power doesn't need to shout for attention.
It is the exact same way in finance. The loudest people in the room usually have the weakest portfolios. It takes a massive amount of confidence to just let the foundation speak for itself. Have you ever had to completely walk away from a project because a client absolutely refused to drop the flashy pillars?
Elara gives a slow, affirming nod, completely dropping any remaining defensive mask to acknowledge their shared professional standard. She smoothly uncrosses and recrosses her legs, entirely comfortable letting him see her unyielding boundaries. Roman holds her gaze with a warm, unblinking focus, deeply grounded as he absorbs her philosophy. He adjusts his frame slightly, casually resting his forearms on his knees to lean further into his active listener posture, while still maintaining their deliberate physical buffer. He sheds any remaining competitive edge, lowering his voice to seamlessly shift the narrative from professional standards to the deeper, more personal concept of trust.
More times than I care to admit, if a client refuses to trust the blueprint and insists on compromising the foundation just to show off, I walk away. I refuse to attach my name to a structure that I already know is going to crack under the pressure.
I operate the exact same way. People usually assume the advisor is the one who gets fired when a portfolio dips, but I've actually dropped several high net worth clients myself. If they are careless and insist on taking unnecessary, flashy risks against my advice, I cut them loose. I have zero interest in managing a partnership if I can't trust the person on the other side of the table to protect the foundation.
Elara tilts her head, her expression reflecting a deep, grounded curiosity as she processes his unyielding standard of trust. She adjusts her position on the cool stone, unconsciously shifting just a fraction closer to him to naturally bridge the physical gap. The heavy armor she usually wears completely dissolves as she leans into the conversation, safely digging into his professional history. Roman lets out a low, appreciative chuckle, his broad shoulders radiating a calm, unshakable confidence. He rests his forearms heavily on his knees to lean into his active listener posture, while still honoring their deliberate buffer zone. He locks his warm, steady focus onto hers, entirely shedding any analytical distance to share a raw piece of his career.
It is incredibly rare to find a financial strategist who values structural stability over a massive commission. Most people would just take the money and look the other way when the cracks start showing. Give me an example. Roman, what exactly does a client have to do to compromise the foundation so badly that you actually walk away from the payout?
I had a client last year who wanted to leverage his entire family trust on a highly volatile, flashy tech merger. I ran the audit and showed him exactly where the floor was going to fall out, but he cared more about the bragging rights at his country club than protecting his kids' futures. When he explicitly told me to ignore the data and execute the trade anyway, I handed him his paperwork and fired him. I refused to manage a structure for someone who is actively trying to burn their own house down.
Elara absorbs his story with a slow, approving nod, a deep, mutual respect for his strict boundaries washing over her features. She adjusts her weight on the cool stone, unconsciously drawn to the rare integrity he just displayed. The heavy armor she typically wears feels entirely unnecessary right now. She leans further into the shared space, feeling completely safe to share her own uncompromising standards. Roman tracks her movements with a warm, unblinking focus, his broad shoulders radiating a quiet, grounded respect. He leans in just a fraction, deeply appreciative of the trust she is actively extending. He completely sheds any remaining analytical distance, entirely invested in studying the fierce dedication behind her words.
I completely understand that. 2 years ago, I had a commercial developer who wanted to significantly downgrade the load-bearing steel in a high-rise, just so he could afford a ridiculous, imported marble waterfall for the main lobby. When he told me to adjust the blueprints to hide the structural deficit from the inspectors, I walked off the site and took my entire firm with me. If the bones of a structure are rotten, no amount of imported marble is going to keep the roof from caving in.
That takes a massive amount of discipline. Most consultants would just take their commission and let someone else deal with the inevitable collapse. It proves that when you build something, you actually expect it to last. I have a lot of respect for someone who refuses to compromise the bones just to sell a flashy lobby.
Elara lets out a quiet, deeply appreciative breath, the absolute validation of his words settling warmly in her chest. She adjusts her posture on the stone bench, completely relaxing into the profound, shared professional respect. The heavy armor she usually needs to defend her strict standards feels entirely unnecessary right now. Roman absorbs her softened expression with a steady, unblinking focus, his broad shoulders radiating a quiet, unshakable support. He remains anchored in his active listener posture, giving her all the room she needs to completely own her brilliance. He is utterly captivated by the uncompromising strength of her character.
It is incredibly rare to find someone who actually understands that. Most people look at my strict boundaries and assume I'm just being difficult or arrogant. They don't realize that refusing to compromise is the only way I can guarantee the structure won't eventually collapse right on top of them.
I don't think it is arrogant at all. It is exactly what makes you a master at what you do. If a client can't see the value in that kind of protection, they don't deserve to have you on the project in the first place. It just proves you know exactly what your time and expertise are actually worth.
Elara lets out a quiet, deeply contented exhale, the absolute validation of his words settling warmly into the space between them. A natural, entirely comfortable lull falls over the stone bench, the heavy professional intensity of their conversation gently fading away as the sun begins to dip lower behind the city skyline. She doesn't reach for her defensive armor, simply allowing herself to bask in the safe, unhurried atmosphere. Roman absorbs the quiet shift with a slow, appreciative smile, his athletic frame fully relaxing in the cool evening breeze. He remains securely grounded in his active listener posture, perfectly recognizing that the week's battles are officially over. He lowers his voice to a soft, intimate rumble, effortlessly transitioning the heavy intellectual sparring into a comfortable off-the-clock companionship.
I think that is the first time anyone has ever described my strict boundaries as a mark of mastery rather than a frustrating obstacle. Thank you, Roman. It is surprisingly nice to just sit here without feeling the need to constantly defend the perimeter.
You never have to thank me for telling the truth. but looking at the sun going down, I think it is officially time we put the blueprints away for the weekend. We are both technically off the clock, and I don't know about you, but holding the line all week takes a massive amount of energy.
Elara lets out a soft, genuine laugh, the sound completely free of her usual guarded tension as she admits to her own exhaustion. She shifts her weight on the smooth stone bench, entirely comfortable letting him steer the evening's momentum now that the heavy professional sparring has faded. Roman flashes a warm, highly approachable smile, completely shedding his intense, analytical persona to step seamlessly into the role of a relaxed companion. He casually stretches his broad shoulders in the cooling air, brilliantly transforming what could have been a high-stakes romantic proposition into a simple, unpretentious extension of their afternoon. He holds her gaze with a steady, unshakable ease, throwing out the lifeline with flawless, low-pressure execution.
It really does. I think I spent so much time defending the structural integrity of this plaza today that I completely forgot to actually eat anything. My reserves are officially running on empty right now.
Mine are completely gone too. I am actually starving. There is a spot just a few blocks down the street. It isn't anything fancy, but the food is incredible. Let's just get out of here and go grab a quick bite. No more audits, no more blueprints, just dinner.
Elara lets out a bright, highly entertained laugh, completely charmed by his effortless transition into a dinner companion. She smoothly pushes herself up from the cool stone bench, entirely ready to abandon the architectural debate for the evening. The heavy, guarded intensity of the afternoon is fully replaced by a vibrant, off-the-clock energy as she accepts his invitation. Roman rises to his feet right beside her, his athletic frame moving with a relaxed, deliberate grace. He flashes a warm, victorious smile, deeply satisfied that she is actively choosing to extend their time together. He gestures casually down the pavement, effortlessly guiding them out of the plaza to start the short walk.
If your only hidden agenda tonight is avoiding starvation, I suppose a temporary ceasefire is acceptable. Lead the way, but if you attempt to seamlessly pivot this dinner into a lecture on inflation metrics or market fluctuations, I am officially turning around and walking right back to my apartment.
I give you my word. The inflation metrics are officially staying at the office. We will leave all the blueprints and the audits right here at the plaza. The place is just a few blocks down the street, and I can guarantee the food is vastly superior to my lectures anyway.
Elara matches his comfortable pace as they navigate the evening pavement, her rhythmic stride flawlessly keeping time with his grounded momentum. She turns her head slightly to look at him, her expression completely softened by a bright, unguarded amusement, entirely dropping her defensive posturing. She fully embraces the low stakes, off-the-clock banter to playfully expand on her threat. Roman lets out a rich, effortless laugh, his athletic frame moving with a relaxed, easygoing grace right beside her. He tracks her movement with a warm, unwavering focus, his eyes dancing with a playful, competitive spark. He seamlessly accepts the comedic terms of her threat, while effortlessly throwing a low-stakes challenge right back to keep their momentum alive.
I will absolutely hold you to that guarantee. If the food is even marginally disappointing, I am officially holding you personally responsible for my wasted time. And frankly, if it is truly terrible, I might actually force you to give that inflation lecture right there in the restaurant, just so I have something to harshly critique.
I accept those terms. If the food is bad, you get the lecture. But if the food is exceptional, I get to pick the exact topic for our next conversational audit. And you aren't allowed to complain about the required reading.
A sudden, crisp evening breeze sweeps down the pavement, cutting through the lingering warmth of the afternoon. Without missing a single step in his relaxed stride, Roman smoothly slips his tailored suit jacket off his broad shoulders. He gently drapes the heavy fabric over her, completely enveloping her in his warmth, while deliberately maintaining their respectful physical distance. Ilara's breath catches softly, the sudden chivalrous gesture entirely disarming her playful, competitive streak for a fraction of a second. She instinctively pulls the heavy lapels closer to her chest, completely surrendering to the incredibly safe, grounded feeling of his protection. She looks up at him, a vibrant, unguarded smile breaking across her features as she flawlessly updates the terms of their comedic bet to include her newly acquired warmth.
The sun is entirely gone, and my chivalry officially dictates that I don't let you freeze out here on the pavement. Keep the jacket on. We still have a few blocks to go.
I suppose I can tolerate your oversized tailoring for a few short blocks, but just so we are perfectly clear, I am officially holding this jacket hostage as collateral. If the food is actually terrible, I am keeping it.
Roman smoothly comes to a halt at the busy intersection, completely shedding any lingering intensity from his confession to seamlessly step back into his role as a relaxed companion. He gestures casually to the surrounding storefronts, his broad shoulders radiating a quiet, grounded triumph. He flawlessly disarms her by throwing her own architectural logic right back at her, proving he had absorbed every single word of her earlier lecture. Elara comes to a stop right beside him, instinctively pulling the heavy lapels of his jacket a fraction tighter against the evening chill. She sweeps her gaze across the chaotic street corners, her defensive posturing entirely melting into a look of genuine, unguarded awe. The realization that he truly values her intellect deeply touches her. She looks up at him, entirely willing to step into the unknown chaos because of the massive trust he just secured.
Welcome to the Bermuda Triangle of high calorie foundations. We have a legendary greasy burger joint right here, a classic slice shop across the street, and a phenomenal mom and pop Chinese spot right over there. You mentioned earlier that true structural power doesn't need massive, unnecessary pillars just to shout for attention. Well, none of these places have flashy columns or imported marble to prove their worth, but I guarantee the structural integrity of their food is absolutely flawless. The choice is entirely yours.
A Bermuda Triangle of structural hazards. If my colleagues could see me standing on this corner right now, they would assume I had suffered a catastrophic mental collapse. But you were actually listening to my lecture on unnecessary pillars. And since we already established that a solid foundation doesn't need to loudly announce itself, I suppose I can overlook the neon lighting. Let's test the blueprint on the burger joint Roman. Lead the way.
Roman smoothly guides her forward, stepping effortlessly into his role as a relaxed, off-the-clock companion. He comes to a halt, turning his warm, steady focus entirely onto her. He offers an unapologetic smile, fully acknowledging the massive leap of trust she is taking by stepping out of her comfort zone. Elara moves past him, the heavy armor she usually carries completely dissolving in the shared space. She sweeps her gaze across the room with profound skepticism, but a wry, yielding smirk quickly breaks through her defenses. She turns back to face him, entirely willing to surrender her control to the man standing beside her.
I know the lighting in here is aggressively hostile and the floor might actually be permanently sticky, but I promise the menu makes up for the lack of aesthetic appeal. The guy working the grill back there has been perfecting this specific foundation for 20 years. You just have to trust the process.
I am actively calculating the odds of contracting a novel pathogen just by standing near this counter. And the fact that I am actually willing to let you order food for me in a place that clearly failed its last 3 municipal inspections is a testament to either my extreme hunger or a massive, highly uncharacteristic lapse in my risk management.
Roman leads her toward a booth in the back corner of the diner. But before she can slide in, he gently stops her. Moving with a controlled, deliberate grace, he chivalrously helps her slip out of the heavy suit jacket, meticulously draping the pristine fabric over the questionable vinyl on her side to ensure her flawless skirt never has to touch the sticky surface. He then slides into his own side of the booth, resting his forearms on the table with a deeply respectful smile that acknowledges the massive trust she just extended. Elara lets out a soft, unguarded breath, entirely disarmed by the profound, unexpected chivalry of his gesture. She slides into the booth, the heavy warmth of his jacket providing a safe, clean barrier beneath her. She scans the chaotic room one last time, before landing her focus squarely on his face. Her skeptical smirk vanishes completely, replaced by a look of raw, undeniable realization as she leans forward to deliver a quiet, profound admission.
I highly appreciate the lapse in risk management. Most people wouldn't step this far out of their comfort zone, and I know exactly what it costs you to drop the perimeter. I will go place the order. You just sit here, let my jacket protect your foundation from the vinyl, and for the first time since we met, try not to analyze the exits.
That is the most terrifying part of this entire evening, Roman. I am sitting in a structurally compromised diner, completely out of my element, relying on your jacket just to maintain a clean perimeter. And for the first time since you walked up to me on that rooftop, I am not actually looking for an exit.